Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shereen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening. Global markets jittery after Silicon Valley Financial Group files for bankruptcy. Banking shares slide across US and Europe despite the rescue of First Republic Bank and Credit Suisse. The Sensex and Nifty lose 2% this week despite a pullback on Friday. RBI Governor assures the Indian banking system is resilient and stable, adds necessary steps have been taken for stress tests on asset liability issues. Tata Consumer calls off negotiations with Bisleri over a potential acquisition. Talks broke down over valuations, with Bisleri's Chauhan seeking to raise about $1 billion. TCS shares remain steady in trade after incoming CEO Krithivasan promises continuity, adding that priorities and strategies will not change. An emotional Rajesh Gopinathan says it was important to resign before the new financial year to give the new CEO a clear runway. More than a dozen production-linked incentive schemes put under review by nodal government ministries. Sources say officials are assessing if higher investment targets have left many companies out of the ambit and if the eligibility criteria needs to be tweaked. That's an exclusive. The Delhi High Court directs Delhi Metro's Rail Corporation to pay Reliance Infra 4,800 crore rupees worth of arbitral award dues within a month. The court says failure may lead to action against Centre, and the Delhi government warns the DMRC funds may be attached as well. Deepak Bagla steps down as the CEO of Invest India. Money Control reports Bagla stepped down after a Commerce Ministry probe. That's an exclusive. Air India witnesses an acute shortage of pilots amidst complaints of delays in long-haul flights. As per CNBC-TV18's analysis, the airline is at least 250 pilots short, and that's most likely the key reason behind the flight delays. Parliament adjourned for the second day in a row amidst loud sloganeering from the Treasury and opposition benches. The BJP says they won't allow Rahul Gandhi to speak in the House unless he apologises for his remarks on Indian democracy in London. The opposition continues demanding a JPC probe into the Adani Hindenburg issue. Chinese President Xi Jinping set to visit Russia next week at the invitation of President Putin. This will be his first visit to Moscow since the Ukraine invasion. Also on the show, concerns over the midday meal scheme, where budget allocation has been reduced significantly over the year when adjusted for inflation. A special report coming up. Well, it has been a week of banking tumult, and that continues to be our top story this evening. Exactly a week after it went belly up, the Silicon Valley Bank Financial Group has now filed for bankruptcy. The company has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and the move comes after it said it was planning to explore strategic alternatives for its businesses. Bank stocks remain under pressure even after a group of US banks came together to rescue First Republic Bank. Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan and 8 others announced they will deposit $30 billion in First Republic to allay fears over its failure. The move came after the Swiss Central Bank issued a $54 billion loan to Credit Suisse. But Credit Suisse troubles are far from over. US shareholders have sued the Swiss bank, claiming that it defrauded them by overstating its prospects ahead of this week's stock crash. In its last annual report, Credit Suisse admitted to have found, and I quote, material weaknesses in its financial reporting processes for the years 2021 and 2022. Frank Holland reports on the turmoil that has rattled the banking sector this week. Frank, many thanks for joining us. And back home, shares on Dalal Street did recover in tandem with the global markets. The Sensex gained over 350 points and the Nifty added 100 points today. Financial stocks also led the recovery. But the story for the week is very different. Both the Sensex and the Nifty down 2% each for the week. Amidst the global banking turmoil, RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das has said the Indian banking system remains resilient and stable. He was speaking at a lecture organised by Federal Bank. Ritu joins us now with the key highlights of what the governor had to say. Ritu.
That's right. Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikanta Das today highlighting that recent developments in the US banking system have done nothing but brought to the fore the criticality of banking sector regulation and supervision. He said specifically it has highlighted the importance of asset liability management by banks, ensuring that there is a robust risk management system in place. There are sustainable credit policies that are followed by the bank. Periodic stress testing is done, and banks are building critical buffers for any unanticipated stress that may may arise. He also said that it also highlights that crypto assets or linked currencies could also be a real danger to the banks directly or indirectly, a stance that RBI has for long maintained. He also said that it must be ensured that each investment a bank makes is protected by appropriate risk assessment internally built by the systems, and this situation therefore needs a careful understanding by banks around the world. In India, he said, the banking sector remains well regulated, well supervised and resilient. There are several steps RBI has taken to strengthen financial institutions in India, and he's confident that now with RBI's focus on identifying the root cause of problems instead of just dealing with the symptoms, the banking sector is well positioned to take on any kind of challenges.
The recent developments in the United States banking system have brought to the fore the criticality of banking sector regulation and supervision. The way the Indian banking system has evolved and the way it is positioned today, as was mentioned earlier, the Indian banking system continues to be resilient and stable. Now, the Reserve Bank has taken necessary steps in all these areas which I just mentioned. That is the area of risk management, stress doing stress tests, doing, focusing on asset liability issues.
Well, that is the RBI governor saying that the Indian banking system is stable and resilient. The big corporate story, Tata Consumer has decided to call off plans to acquire Bisleri. A statement sent to the exchanges says that negotiations with Bisleri for a potential acquisition have now been seized. Shilpa Ranipeta joins us now with more. Shilpa, what seems to have stalled this deal?
There were reports over the past few weeks that the talks between Tata's and Bisleri had hit a snag over valuation concerns. And now Tata Consumer has officially said that it has ceased talks with Bisleri over a potential transaction. Now, the owner of Bisleri, Ramesh Chauhan, was looking to raise about $1 billion through the sale of the company, but were given to understand that both the companies were unable to agree upon a valuation. And now the deal is officially off, with Tata Consumer also clarifying that it had not entered into any binding commitment on this matter. Now, news of Bisleri looking for a new owner first came in November last year. And at the time, Chairman Ramesh Chauhan had said that he was looking to sell the company because his daughter, Jayanti Chauhan, who has been, in fact, an integral part of the company since she was 24, she's also been spearheading new product development, sales and marketing, but she did not show interest in taking over the company. Now, remember, Bisleri has a 32% market share in the organized packaged drinking water category in India, and in fact is synonymous with bottled water in the country. Now, for Tata Consumer, acquiring Bisleri could have expanded its portfolio of bottled water, which it currently sells under two brands. That's the Himalayan Natural Mineral Water and the Tata Water Plus brands. Now, what direction Bisleri takes with the deal with Tata being called off will have to keenly be watched.
Shilpa, many thanks for joining us. TCS shares remaining steady in trade after incoming CEO Kriti Vasan promised continuity, adding that priorities and strategies will not change. And emotional Rajesh Gopinathan says it was important to resign before the new financial year so that the new CEO has a clear runway. Here's more on the change of guard at India's largest IT company.
There is nothing more challenging than doing the quarter on quarter and making sure that performance keeps up with it. It's been 10 years of doing that on a relentless basis, and I've enjoyed every minute of doing it. But then sometimes when you get to those milestones, you start thinking, okay, so what's next?
12 hours after a bolt from the blue, the outgoing CEO of TCS, Rajesh Gopinathan, spoke about his decision to leave the job he took over from N. Chandrasekharan 6 years ago. TCS has appointed Kriti Vasan as CEO designate, and he will take over from Gopinathan in September.
I owe it to all our customers, all our colleagues, our employees, and all stakeholders to make sure that I am there for whatever time that Kriti needs, and will be available to Kriti 100%, not just during this transition period, at any point in time in future.
TCS has stuck to its policy of promoting an internal talent, with Kriti Vasan, a veteran at TCS, to the top position. Now, he has experience across multiple functions, and he has been leading the company's largest vertical, BFSI, which contributes over a third of TCS's revenues, by heading it for more than a decade.
A career Tata employee, Rajesh Gopinathan's 6-year, 1-month stint as MD and CEO has seen the company's market value double. Return of shares increased by over 2.5 times. It's also been marked by generous dividend payouts and buybacks. TCS has seen its market cap double from $70 billion to just over $141 billion as of closing yesterday. In rupee terms, the company's market cap has more than doubled to 11.65 lakh crore rupees. Like Gopinathan, who stepped into Chandra's shoes, Kriti will need to steer the company through an uncertain global economic landscape.
The concern or the focus would be on how do we seize those opportunities in front of us and make the organization grow, and it's for our customers, for our associates as well. As I said, these are the two pillars, and whatever we do will be for those two set of stakeholders.
While the street was surprised by the management change, there is confidence in the transition plan.
They're saying the leadership change was unexpected during a challenging macro environment. CLSA says, given the age of TCS's senior leadership, Kriti Vasan is 58 years old, while NGS or N. Ganapathy Subramaniam, the COO of the company, is 63 years old. So CLSA believes that succession planning could become a point of focus, especially for long-term investors. Morgan Stanley says it may create a short-term overhang. However, they expect the transition to be smooth and well-managed, as seen in the stock.
Should be a smooth transition. Timing is probably not ideal given what the industry is facing as we speak, but it is what it is.
So what next for Rajesh Gopinathan? Well, he hasn't given making his resume too much thought.
I never wrote my resume after campus. And on campus, batchmates will know that we used to have a repository. One instance of leadership skills that you showed, one great learning that you had, one failure that you had. I have had no practice in doing that for the last 28 years. Haven't thought about it. Let me say that TCS has been integral to who I am. The group has been integral to who I am. I had never any second thoughts throughout my entire period.
Kriti Vasan has his job cut out for him as he makes a new beginning as the man in charge of the Tata Group's crown jewel. A CNBC-TV18 Bureau report. A change of guard at TCS. A quick check of some of the other headlines tonight. Fintech platform PhonePe has raised an additional $200 million from majority stakeholder Walmart. The funding is part of PhonePe's $1 billion fundraise to scale new businesses like insurance, stockbroking and wealth management. This round of funding has been raised at a pre-money valuation of $12 billion, making PhonePe India's most valuable fintech company. The Bengaluru Income Tax Appellate Tribunal has allowed Flipkart's appeal and granted deductions towards ESOP expenditure. The company had filed for a loss of nearly 140 crore rupees, against which it was subjected to the addition of 1,708 crore rupees for valuation and marketing intangibles and around 16 crore rupees for ESOP expenses. The National Company Law Tribunal has approved the merger of HDFC and HDFC Bank. Shareholders of both companies had approved the merger on the 28th of February. The merger, valued at $40 billion, is touted to be the largest in India's corporate history. Here's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive tonight. More than a dozen PLI schemes are currently being reviewed by nodal ministries. The government will soon conduct a high-level review meeting on the eligibility criteria and other terms as part of PLI schemes. Parikshit is standing by now with the details. Parikshit, take us through why the government is reviewing the PLI schemes.
That's right. A review of 14 production-linked incentive schemes is underway across ministries, and a high-level meeting could take place very soon. Sources say the government is considering whether the investment targets mentioned in some PLI schemes are actually realistic. For example, the auto PLI requires vehicle OEMs to make an investment of 2,000 crores over 5 years. Officials are reviewing whether the high investment targets have left many companies out of the PLI ambit. What is also being assessed is whether the price caps in some PLI schemes are a hurdle to manufacturing growth. For example, incentives under mobile phone PLI scheme are for phones costing more than rupees 15,000, and PLI for electric two-wheelers is for vehicles costing up to 1.5 lakhs. So the government is considering whether eligibility criteria should only have an incentive cap and not a price cap. Officials are also assessing how certain OEMs are making future investments in the PLI targeted sectors without actually claiming incentives and participating in PLI. And does this mean the eligibility criteria has restricted manufacturing and constrained the number of players that can participate?
Thanks very much, Parikshit. A quick check of some of the other headlines. The Delhi High Court has directed Delhi Metro Rail Corporation to pay Reliance Infra 4,800 crore rupees in arbitral award dues within a month. The court has also warned that the failure to pay may lead to action against the centre and the Delhi government. Deepak Bagla, the managing director and CEO of Investor India, has stepped down. Sources tell Money Control that his resignation comes after a Ministry of Commerce audit questioned the work that was done by the organisation. Frequent delays of Air India's overseas flights have caused pain for air travellers, and this delay is possibly due to the shortage of pilots. An analysis by CNBC-TV18 shows that Air India needs to add more than 200 pilots to its current roster. Madiha joins us now with more details. Madiha, what exactly is leading to the delays and on which sectors?
Well, this has been a continuing issue with Air India. Many passengers have been complaining about long delays in flights, especially the long-haul flights like the US destinations. So I tried to get to the root cause of these inadvertent delays, and an acute shortage of pilots appears as the most likely reason, as you also mentioned. We know that Air India has expanded its fleet with reinducting grounded planes and adding more leased planes. I'll get to the math here now. The airline currently has 114 aircraft, of which 68 are narrow-body planes and 46 are wide-body planes, including 19 Boeing 777s and 27 787s. Now, sources tell me that each 777 requires 26 pilots and 787 requires 20 pilots. So 46 wide-body planes need 1,034 pilots, and the 68 narrow-body planes need 816 pilots. Now, adding this up comes to about 1,850 pilots needed to fly 114 aircraft. But we learned that Air India currently has only about 1,600 pilots. So the shortage is pretty clear here. And we also need to factor in that not all pilots will be reporting on duty. Some may be sick or on leave. A similar situation is also being experienced on the cabin crew side. The pilots and crew also need to rest between flights and cannot exceed their mandatory flying hours. So all this put together is most likely leading to the delays in flights that passengers are experiencing. We reached out to the airline seeking their response on the issue, but they're yet to respond to our query.
Madiha, many thanks for joining us. We will head into a short break, but up next, concerns remain over the budget outlay for the midday meal scheme. Experts argue that the funds allocated in the budget would make it hard for schools to provide as nutritious food to children as is needed. Parliament adjourned for the second day in a row amidst loud sloganeering from the Treasury and opposition benches. The BJP says they will not allow Congress MP Rahul Gandhi to speak in the House unless he apologises for his remarks on Indian democracy in London. The opposition continues demanding a JPC probe into the Adani Hindenburg matter. Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to visit Russia next week at the invitation of Vladimir Putin. The two are expected to hold talks aimed at furthering the strategic cooperation between the two countries. This will be the Chinese president's first visit since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Poland and Slovakia promised to send fighter jets to Ukraine. Remember, Ukrainian President Zelensky has been consistently urging NATO nations to provide more military support in its war against Russia. The Kremlin has warned that fighter jets sent by Ukraine's Western allies are subject to destruction. Massive protests erupt in France after the Macron government bypasses parliament to force through an unpopular pension reform, including raising the retirement from 62 to 64. Macron justifies his decision to bypass parliament, saying there was too much economic risk to the country if lawmakers voted against the bill. Protests intensify across Israel after Prime Minister Netanyahu rejects the president's compromise formula on judicial system overhaul. Measures, if they go through, will, among others, give the Israeli parliament the power to override the Supreme Court's decision with a simple majority. The popular midday meal scheme, now renamed PM Poshan, is the Education Ministry's second-largest student-centric welfare scheme. Budget 2023 allocates 11,600 crore rupees for the scheme for FY24. But experts are worried that this outlay is lower than last year's revised estimates. Kiran Khatri reports that concerns also surround the quality of the food and the implementation, since when adjusted for inflation, the allocation has been reducing significantly over the years. Take a look.
7-year-old Sonakshi's father leaves for work at 7 a.m. every day and there's no one else to cook for her and her 2 younger siblings. So they go to school on an empty stomach and rely on the government's midday meal scheme. Sometimes their teachers let them eat earlier than other students.
They are among about 12 crore children covered under the PM Poshan scheme. The scheme is touted to be one of the world's largest free school meals programs. The allocation, though, in this year's budget has been reduced to 11,600 crore rupees from the FY23 revised estimates of 12,800 crore rupees.
Experts say the bigger concern is that in real terms, when adjusted for inflation, there has been a sustained decline in this allocation over the past few years.
9 years ago in 2014-15, the budget for midday meals was more than 13,000 crores. And today it's less than 12,000 crores. That's in money terms. So in real terms, it's about 40% less today if you take into account the price increases. It's about 40% less today than 9 years ago. And that is really the concern, that it's becoming more and more difficult for the schools to provide a nutritious meal because the budget is so small.
But the government points out that this year's budget allocation is 13% higher than the allocation in Budget 2022. The Ministry of Education has also told Parliament, and I quote, "The allocation is likely to be sufficient for the implementation of the scheme with existing norms during 2023-2024." End quote. But experts are still concerned. In October last year, the government hiked the cost per midday meal per child to 5 rupees and 45 paise for primary classes and to 8 rupees and 17 paise for upper primary classes. This was a 9.6% hike and came after a 2-year gap. The Center for Policy Research says this hike did not account for a 24% rise in food inflation between April 2020 and October 2022, and that the meal cost per child should have been raised to over 6 rupees for primary classes and above 9 rupees for upper primary classes to account for inflation. Organizations like the Akshaya Patra Foundation, which supply midday meals to government schools, receive grains from the Food Corporation of India and cash subsidies from the centre and state governments. Their average meal cost per child is more than 12 rupees. So they rely on private donors to make up any shortfall.
We get 6 rupees 65 paisa from the Government of India and the various state governments in the form of cash subsidy and grain subsidy. So this contributes to about 54% of our total running expenditure per meal, and the balance, 46%, Akshaya Patra raises from various corporates, trusts, foundations and individuals.
Also, the cost of the scheme is split between the centre and states, and the central funds are released in 2 installments. But this release has been delayed.
We've seen there was some technical difficulty, and as a result, in the ad hoc grant couldn't be released. So no funds were released under the scheme in the first quarter. And again, when we do this analysis, by December 2022, only 52% of the funds had been released under the scheme. And only 5 states had received 60% of their funds.
Experts believe that unless the budget allocation for the PM Poshan scheme is increased significantly, the quality of meals provided to children will suffer, especially in terms of nutrition. In Mumbai, Kiran Khatri.
Well, an important story there by Kiran Khatri. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned to the news here on CNBC-TV18. From all of us here, have a great weekend. See you Monday.